Hey guys, what is up? Mr. Daniels here, coming at you from my house. So I am staying in at my house a little bit longer this morning to help watch Ellie this morning so that Stephanie can sleep in a little bit longer. So I decided, hey, you know what? I'll just do this recording, this teaching from home, and then I'll post this later when I get to go to school, just because my internet's so slow here, so I won't be able to do it here. But yeah, I got my cup of Joe, and I've got the old good book right here in front of me, and so we're good to go. Hope you guys are doing well. Miss you guys, and hope you were able to serve yesterday for our service day. Today we're going to be in Matthew 9, verses 18 through 38. So yeah, I'm just going to jump right in, and then I'll do a quick teaching on this and post or give you guys a little assignment to do, a little activity to kind of activate what we've read here today. So here we go. Let's jump in. Matthew chapter 9, starting in verse 18, all the way through 38. And I know I normally read from the NIV at school, but at home I read the ESV translation. So if you want to follow along, that's the translation that I'll be in, the ESV. So all right, here we go. Starting in verse 18. While he was saying these things to them, behold, a ruler came in and knelt before him. Oh yeah, sorry. I wanted to just give you a recap. With last teaching, I talked about who's in your crew. We talked about the four guys that brought the paralytic man before Jesus. And we also talked about Jesus hanging out with Matthew and the tax collectors and sinners. And so the people that Jesus had in his crew were people that had pure hearts. And then we talked about the paralytic man, his crew, those four brothers, those four bros who did whatever it took to get this guy close to Jesus. And so that's where we left off, and now we're going to pick up today. So here we go. While he was saying these things to them, behold, a ruler came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus rose and followed him with his disciples. And behold, a woman who had suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. For she said to herself, "If I only touch his garment, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. And when Jesus came to the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead." Where am I at here? Okay, sorry. He said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And the report of this went throughout all of that district. And as Jesus passed on from there, two blind men followed him, crying aloud, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he entered the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes, saying, "According to your faith, be it done to you." And their eyes were opened, and Jesus sternly warned them, "See that no one knows about it." But they went away and spread his fame through all that district. As they were going away, behold, a demon-oppressed man who was mute was brought to him. And when the demon had been cast out, the mute man spoke. And the crowds marveled, saying, "Never was anything like this seen in Israel." But the Pharisees said, "He casts out demons by the prince of demons." And Jesus went throughout all the cities and the villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the harvest." Okay, so there's a couple things that I want to bring up here. And the main topic that I want us to focus on for today is how desperate are you for Jesus? What does desperation look like for you? There's several different stories of people in this passage who are desperate for God. They're desperate for a touch from Jesus. The first instance that we have is we first get this ruler who comes up to Jesus and says, my daughter has just died, but if you touch her, if you just lay your hand on her, she will be healed. And so I don't even like to think about that, but I have daughters, and so I can't imagine the desperation that this guy was in. His daughter had just died, and he was desperate, just desperate for Jesus to come and touch his daughter and to bring his daughter back. Okay, so there's that first example of desperation. The second example that we have is there was a woman who had suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years. So she'd had this issue of bleeding for 12 years. Interesting fact as well. In some of the other gospel accounts, the daughter that had just died, Jairus' daughter is the guy's name, was 12 years old. So the daughter was 12 years old, and this woman had been suffering with this issue of bleeding for 12 years. Very interesting, significant. The number 12 in itself is significant. Obviously, Jesus had 12 disciples. There's the 12 tribes of Israel. So it's often the number of authority, power. And so pretty interesting. Jesus' authority and his power is released into this 12-year-old daughter. She's healed. And into this woman who suffered with this issue of bleeding for 12 years. Pretty cool. So, but this woman, she's desperate, and she even says, like, if only I can touch him, like, and you have to imagine, like, there are people. It's a crowd. Okay, there's people pressed in around Jesus, and this woman is breaking through the crowd to get to Jesus and just touch his robe. Again, we know that she was desperate because she's bleeding, which would make her unclean. Okay, according to Jewish law, so she's an unclean woman, and it would be and Jewish law, if you touched anyone, then that person would be unclean. So she is breaking the Jewish law. She's so desperate to touch Jesus, to get him, to touch his cloak so that she might be healed. This other guy, who's a ruler, is going to Jesus desperate, going to like a Jewish poor person, basically, like a Jewish homeless person, which Jesus was, like a nomad. He didn't have a place. Said the Son of Man did not have a place to lay his head. So this ruler's humbling himself and going to Jesus. Because he's desperate. His daughter's just died. And then we move on, and there's another story of Jesus passing through, and there's these two blind men, and they're crying aloud, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us." And in this story, it's a briefer account in Matthew. In Mark, it's a little bit longer, but you actually there are people that actually are trying to hush the blind people, not to to try and basically not be a disturbance to Jesus. They're like, quiet down, trying to quiet these blind men down. And it says that they shout all the louder, okay? So these three instances where you have these people of desperation. The guy who's just lost his daughter, 12-year-old daughter. The woman who suffered with bleeding for 12 years, okay? And then you have these two blind men who are crying out for Jesus, and people are trying to tell them to be quiet, and they don't. They just keep. They said they yell out all the louder because they're desperate to be healed. And then the next man, as they're going away, a demon-oppressed man who was mute was brought to him, and this person, the demon is cast out, and then the person can speak. So if you can imagine being blind and never being able to see, and then someone passing you who you think has the power to heal you, you would cry out. You would be desperate to get healed. Same with this demon-possessed man who's never spoken. If you can imagine never speaking, okay, being mute. And there's somebody who's coming around who you think could give you the ability to speak and communicate to people. You would be desperate to get healed, okay? So, and it's even wild, and it's similar in the situation and the stories that we're hearing right now with coronavirus. You know, if you had a family member, and there are stories of this, of family members who are sick, like you would be desperate to see them healed, to get them the proper care that they need, so that you could have them back, right? So that they would be healed. And so my question is, for us today, and how this relates, is what does desperation look like in our own lives? Are we desperate for Jesus? You know, and maybe some of us aren't in the same type of situation in our life. Maybe we're not in a place where we feel extremely desperate for him. But all of us are in a season of a storm right now in our lives. And in this time, more than ever, we need to be desperate for Jesus, crying out, going after him. And a lot of times that means laying something down. Laying down, you know, for the ruler, it was laying down his pride, humbling himself. For the woman, it was laying down embarrassment and shame because she's an unclean woman and she's going to be pressing against people and touching people. So laying down her embarrassment and her shame. You know, for the blind, and for the mute man, basically, for them, it was going against, well, for the blind men, it was going against what the people said. You know, they're telling them to be silent, to stop yelling, and they just yelled all the more. And so they had to lay down maybe friendships, maybe the people around them. And so my question for you guys today, and how we can practically apply this teaching, is how can you become more desperate for Jesus? What are some things that possibly are keeping you from desperation? Okay, so what I would like for you to do is actually write down, first, I want you to write down, what are some things that are holding you back from getting to Jesus? Okay, what are some things that would keep you? Like I said, the ruler, it might have been his pride. Like, I don't know if I should bother Jesus. But when you get to a place of desperation, you lay that down. You don't care. Okay, you don't care if you're going to be a bother. You don't care about your pride. The woman, oh, you know, I'm going to make all these other people unclean. What if I get seen? I'm going to be embarrassed. In desperation, you don't care. Okay, you drop those things. So what are some things maybe that you need to drop in this season of desperation? And that's the first thing. Okay, so what are some things that maybe you need to let go to increase your desperation for Jesus? And then the second thing is, what does desperation for Jesus look like for you? Okay, what steps can you take to get closer to him, to touch him, to touch the hem of his robe, like the woman did, like the ruler did, like the blind man who yelled all the louder? How can you yell louder? Okay, how can you draw closer just to touch Jesus during this season? What are some steps? What are some things that you can do? All right, so 2 parts today for the application. Write down what can you lay down in your life to make you more desperate for Jesus? And then number 2, what does desperation for Jesus look like for you? What are some things, practical things like that you can do in this season to get closer to him? Okay? So, hey, that's it for today, guys. I love you guys, miss you guys, and hope you're doing well. And yeah, I really, really hope and pray that you're able to use this time and use this season to grow in your desperation for Jesus and draw closer to him. All right, guys, until next time.